All right, it's a slow Friday evening. I have my big can of cheap Japanese beer. Let's do some philosophy. So you guys liked that video about anarchism. I can tell you gave me a 2.5-star rating. I've never gotten that before. And it's moments like these that I'm rather happy I do live in a world where we have the government, or the state, as some of you insist on calling it, for reasons only known to you. Because in receiving such a passionate outcry against me for stating my ideas, I rather would have reason to fear for my safety if there wasn't a government standing between you and I. Which is rather ironic, because these are the people who are trying to advocate the idea that we are all capable of self-government. That is to say, we're all capable of believing and maintaining the belief and acting in accordance with the belief that we needn't coerce to get what we want. But whatever. There are a couple of things that seem to surface again and again when anarchism comes up, and it has to do with the idea of violence, the idea of the social contract, and it has to do with the idea of government and what it does. And these are all very closely interconnected, and it seems that the entirety of the ridiculousness concerning the notion of anarchism is based on a single premise, or at least a few very, 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 very finite premises, just a few, just maybe 2 or 3, something like that. Okay, so let's talk about those. First that I hear is this assumption that the social contract is the agreement that no one should be violent. This is not true. I don't know where people get this. I think this is just rather useful for anarchists, because it is only from an anarchist that I have ever heard this particular variation of the social contract theory. Social contract simply recognizes that in a state of nature, everyone is able to freely coerce. And under a social contract society, or under a society that adheres to a social contract, they simply agree between themselves not to coerce freely. It does not mean that they will never coerce. It means that their coercion will be moderated. And from that, we decide, how do we moderate our coercion? Who will administer our respective coercion? That becomes the government, or what people insist on calling the state. So therein, to begin an argument on the premise that the social contract is there to cease all violence and coercion, and then to say, look, the government is doing the same thing, it's the snake eating its own tail, is just, it's a botch argument. It's a straw man, I think is what they call it, which we really need to come up with a new word, because I hate that phrase, but that's what it is. I think they're just making shit up so they can tear it down. The social contract theory, again, very simply, is the agreement between each other not to coerce freely, not to say that there should be no coercion. We're good with coercion. In fact, we want coercion to be there. That's the reason we have government, because if you and I have an agreement and one of us doesn't follow through, we want that coercive force to just lash out at that person that broke the deal. So the idea that social contract wants no coercion to happen ever, or no violence to happen ever, is simply false. Second, it would seem, what is the second one? The second one is, I've now forgotten. Let me get my notes. Hello, Stargazer. Thank you for, as I'm looking at these, thank you for your comments. I know you comment a lot on the channel. I'm actually happy that someone who talks on the channel a lot decided to respond to me. I'm still waiting for Luke 12,000. I'm guessing he'll hit me back, but if he doesn't, I'll be happy to speak at any length to you and whoever else who wants to get into this. Okay, the second point here. Anarchists tend to believe that if you are an agent of government, then that somehow automatically gives you the right to use the coercive force of government in any way that you please. This is only true in a situation in which the administration of government is the byproduct of a person's will, like in a dictatorship or some kind of despotism. In a situation in which we have a constitutional government that is founded on axioms that are relevant to the formation of government, and different self-evident truths that are relevant to the formation of government, as you would all be very well familiar of, being in our modern time, you're not going to account for all the forms of government and simply saying that some forms of government allow people to make shit up as they go. The point of a constitutional government that is based on axioms relevant the formation of government, such as the individual rights and inalienable rights that are not just because our Constitution said so or some guys with some goofy wigs said so, but because it is necessary in order for government to be formed to actualize the fact that we all have equal rights before the government, and that in making the government, we are all making an equal sacrifice, that no one is making any greater or lesser of a sacrifice or any less or greater of an agreement. Like I said in the last video, it is merely the agreement to not coerce freely. That's it. It's not quantitative, it's a qualitative agreement. And in that, we all have the equal right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why it becomes self-evident. And when you consider that, the laws then that are proper in a constitutional government are the result of axiom, not of whim, not of will. So if you just say that, look, the guys in government can do whatever they want, that's not the case. That's not the case. Certainly there can be corruption and coercion and injustice in any government, any form of government, and that's fine. However, here's the problem. In your world, you need everyone to be able to commit themselves to an agreement of non-coercion. In your anarchist world, you need everyone to play by the rules without there being any rules. So in reality, for the anarchist state to exist, to ever be workable, it could be done within the confines of a governing state, or in the confines of the state. Because remember, in a state, in a government, it is only doing the administering through individual people. And if those people are all self-moderated, then none of them were going to do any form of coercion. And if no one breaks the law because all the laws are proper and they never, and no one goes back on their promises, and even when they do, we're all, you know, these sort of Buddha-like type people and living in this anarchist state, there would be no need for coercion. And so it doesn't matter at that point if there is government or not, because the government would be made up of all the very enlightened people that the rest of us would be, you see. It falls flat. You can be an anarchist state with all the rules in the world hanging over your head, but so long as the guy with the cleaver or whatever, with the rope for the guillotine, is also an enlightened little spirit like yourself, then who the hell cares? It doesn't matter in the end. So there were 2 points in there. One is the social contract theory is not trying to get rid of coercion, it's trying to moderate coercion. And second, to say that government is above the law is improper because of what government is, how it was made. It's made in the equal forfeit of a person's free ability to coerce in an agreement to moderate that coercion by some kind of principle. And when we reject the idea that a person is, say, a godsend, like a deity of some kind, then we cannot believe that it is the will of any one man that should be how this coercive power is moderated, but rather by a set of axiomatic statements, human rights, these sorts of things that we benefit from every day.